Tonight's show is Living in Black History, and you'll get to understand that as we move along. A couple of housekeeping things, my friends. I'm Anthony Brogdon. If I didn't say that earlier, I'm the host of the show, the producer, and so on and so forth of this broadcast. But I am a historian by way of doing some research for first a documentary that I've done titled Business in the Black. This is streaming on Amazon. For a book that I've written titled Black Business Book on the Rise of Black Business in America. For a children's book that I've written titled They Did It. All of this deals with, in particular, Black business in the early days. And then also just recently, and I don't have a copy with me, I released two Black history calendars. One titled They Did It. That's kind of a term that I use a lot, as you might see. And that one is a calendar of 12 Black people that lived in the 1800s, similar as the children's book. But then also another calendar titled Do Your Best, Be Your Best. And it's motivational quotes by famous African Americans back in the day, from the Booker T. Washingtons, the Madam C.J. Walkers, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and others. Some quotes that will inspire you. And all this is available on my website, businessintheblack.net. Don't let me forget to mention, I do public speaking. So if you need somebody to give you what I call good Black history, I'm your guy. I talk about the successes of Black folks, particularly in business, but in so many other areas. That's what I focus in on. Now, as I mentioned, tonight's show is about living in Black history. And I found a gentleman who that's what he does. He runs a museum. And so come on, brother Herman Johnson, and tell us a little bit about what is living in Black history.
Well, how you doing?
Good,
and I'm
good.
glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's very important, the story that I'm bringing to the table, because it's about Mound Bayou, Mississippi, which is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, all Black founded towns in the country that still exist and still prospering. You may not see certain things as we reshift or we restructure or we redo things there in Mound Bayou, but when you're talking about living in Black history, this has been a successful town from the get-go. And our story is a story that all America needs to hear, needs to understand that this story mirrors actually who we are as a people in this country, as Black people in this country, you know, being innovative, being successful, being educated, being focused in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. Mound Bayou is in the Mississippi Delta. If you know anything about the Mississippi Delta and you know where Greenville and Cleveland and Clarksdale is, we're right in the center of those cities. We're 100 miles south of Memphis, 127 miles north of Jackson, close about 18 miles from the river, Mississippi River, right in the middle of the Mississippi Delta. And this town was founded by men and women who were ex-enslaved people of out of a plantation out of Vicksburg, Mississippi. Really, it was kind of close to Vicksburg, Mississippi. But it has a true American story, because the guys that came from that plantation, even though we have a stigma, and we should have a stigma about being enslaved and being on plantations, this plantation was run different. And it was owned by Joseph Davis, the elder brother of Jefferson Davis. For those who don't know who Jefferson Davis is or was, he was the president of the Confederacy. Well, people don't know the story that really the reason that he was able to run the Confederacy was because the enslaved people on that plantation was actually running his plantation in his absence. and they had made a lot of the decisions for him anyway. He was known by the people around him to be a kind of incompetent guy. Um, he reminds me of some people of the present day, but anyway, uh, but people figured that he would fail, and he did with the Confederacy. But the thing is that the story of Mound Bayou touches so many areas um, of national life, and I don't know how much I can say here, but I think everybody should go to the references to Mound Bayou. One of the resources I think is great is start with the Mound Bayou Museum, moundbayumuseum.org. On that website, there are videos that would maybe intrigue you and maybe get you sparked to go to another place. But also there are books that are out. And if you just type in Mound Bayou on YouTube, there are a lot of videos there. And anyway, that story of them being on that plantation, they end up buying the plantation they used to be enslaved on. Nobody's heard a story like that, I don't think. And the owners of that plantation, after they buy it, they become some of the wealthiest people in the country, in the top 5 wealthiest people in the country, right out of slavery. And so there was a series of circumstances that happened that caused them to have to start all over again. And they came up to this area where we currently live, and that area was a swampland. There's a train running through it, and the train people really were the one who had the acreage, and they sold property to these people who are coming up from the Vicksburg area, and they bought acreage. They bought 840 acres. They bought 840 acres of a swampland, but they also were able to sell 37,000 acres surrounding the town in order to bring up the farming community from the Vicksburg area, and they started Mound Bayou. And that town became successful because they planted cotton, and the cotton that they planted there in Mound Bayou became the highest grade of cotton in the world. Now, this, because Mound Bayou people had the highest grade of cotton in the world, the other planters of cotton in the general area, in Bolivar County and maybe in Sunflower and in Coahoma County, those people will start bringing their crops to Mound Bayou in order to get the Mound Bayou label. Because if you had the Mound Bayou label, you had premium price on your cotton. And because of that, Mound Bayou had to build, instead of having 1 cotton gin, they had to build 6, because they had all this product coming into the town. And because they were unique, because it was all Black in the most racist state in the country, then the business people there profited greatly because of all the people that were coming into the town, because it was unique, like I said. And so thereby this place becomes, the people there in Mound Bayou become very, very wealthy. And, you know, they were keen on education because they had been educated on that plantation, and they come up to this area and they become educated again. And now it's a jewel in the desert. You know what I'm saying? And actually, when the president of the country at that time, around that time, was invited, he came, because some of the people there were high up in the Republican Party.
You're
And
talking
the
about Black
president
people,
comes.
right?
Black people, right? The Republicans at that time were Black people were Republicans at that time.
Right.
And so they're pretty much high up in the Republican Party. And the President Theodore Roosevelt came. He addressed the people in Mound Bayou, and you'll find that 2 years later, he's still talking about Mound Bayou because he's so impressed. And he called it the jewel of the Delta. It was the most beautiful place he had seen up and down that railroad. And so there's a lot more to it. And Mound Bayou becomes the place where the first HMO is started. At the hospital there in Mound Bayou. It becomes a place where, when the Freedom Riders were coming down through the South, they know that there's a hospital there in Mound Bayou, and they can calculate or strategize their movements around the South, knowing that there's a hospital in Mississippi that they can go to if necessary. That hospital becomes, like I said, first the HMO in the country. And then also in Mound Bayou, a lot of the civil rights movement was birthed there. In 1955, the first large rally after the 54 Brown versus Board of Education decision what happened in Mound Bayou. 13,000 people from around the country came because the higher up people in the civil rights movement would come to Mound Bayou. Thurgood Marshall, A. Philip Randolph, all the people who had names in that area, in that time span, will come to Mound Bayou. They have these large rallies in Mound Bayou, civil rights movement, civil rights rallies, because in Mound Bayou, you could have that number of people and not be concerned about white people coming in, looking over your shoulder. So they would have a lot of strategy sessions of what was going on in the South. And so that shook up the South, those large rallies in Mound Bayou. And in turn, or in reaction to what's happening in Mound Bayou, the white people went down to Indianola, Mississippi, and formed the White Citizen Council, because now they're afraid of what's going on in Mound Bayou. So there's a very unique history. A lot of people have not heard about it. And we're on a mission to get this story told. And then we're on, and as we go along, we're unearthing a lot more of the story that we had not heard of. So we have come to understand that Black history, in a huge sense, has not been told. And I think, not just in Mound Bayou, but across the country, a lot of our story has not been told. And so we're understanding that the people with the most courage, the people with the most tenacity, are the people who stood up and continued to stand up in the face of all the adversity that happened here in this country. And so a lot of the pat on the backs for those types of things should go to the people of Mound Bayou, or go to people, not just Mound Bayou, they go to the people of this country, Black people who stood up and stood in the face of all the things, the unfairness that was happening here in this country. So in essence, Mound Bayou mirrors all of that. There's a lot more that I can say, but I'm going to stop at this moment, and let you direct this whole thing,
But
because I can keep going.
you're doing real well. I know it's your passion to talk about this. First of all, everybody who's watching it, what he didn't say is you are the founder, you and your brother co-founder and executive director of the museum, right? Tell us
Yes,
that.
I'm the executive director. And my brother and I, Daryl and I, founded the museum. We had worked on it for years, and we had talked to people for years. And when I say years, I mean, I think we went back to 06, 07 in the beginning of working on revitalizing Mound Bayou. When we first started, it wasn't just a museum. A museum was on one item on a list of maybe 20 things that we wanted to do in Mound Bayou, and the museum was just on the list. And we worked on a lot of different things. We had a lot of other people around the country who were assisting us or had ideas to help revitalize Mound Bayou, because we know what it used to be. A symbol of Black progress and prosperity in the South, and we have a pathway, we figured, to return to that. And so that's what we have been working on. But the thing that caught fire, or the thing that really worked out for us, was the museum. So yes,
Okay.
I am the executive director.
What's the name of the museum?
Simply Mound Bayou Museum.
Simply Mound Bayou Museum.
Yes,
Okay.
my brother has another name for it that's on the state of Mississippi site that you register these things. I think it's like Mound Bayou Museum of African American History or something like that. I just call it Mound Bayou Museum.
Okay.
And I think you can find it that way.
When we talk about the topic being living Black history, and that's what you do every day, being a director and being a part of growing up in that town, as you had told me earlier. Why you? Why didn't nobody know about it? Because you a young guy. I mean, what happened before you with the history of Mound Bayou?
Well, I think because and this is just I'm not a psychiatrist or historian, or even though I'm working at a museum, I'm really not a historian. But I'm from the town, and I'm one of the descendants of some of the original settlers. And so, growing up there, you kind of realize that you come to realize you're in a unique place. You know, you're just living life at first. You got friends, and you're on your bike, and you're doing what kids do. But at some point, you realize that the rest of the country is not like you. When I was growing up, you see on the civil rights. I'm growing up in the '60s. And so I'm looking at on television, I'm seeing, Kennedy being killed, and King being killed, and in '68, Robert Kennedy and killed, and you see Medgar Evers is shot, and you see all of this turmoil going, and it's not happening in Mount Bayou. So you kind of start to realize that there are things that are different there, because I'm growing up in a town where there is not that. You don't have that. And when I go to another town, maybe I start sensing that that guy over there don't like me.
Oh,
He's
hold on, hold
showing,
on, hold on, hold on. I got
you're
so
right.
what
You're
you're
right.
saying is hold on, let me back up here. Is Mound Bayou 90% black?
When I grew up, Mount Bayou was 100% black.
Oh, I see.
So we didn't grow up with white people. Um, a lady came to the museum a few months ago, and she was in her 90s, and her grandchildren were bringing her, looked like for her last hurrah, and they brought her to the museum because she was born in Mount Bayou, and she left when she was 11, and she had never left Mount Bayou until she was 11, and she went to Birmingham. She told me, and she told me that was the first time that she saw white people. She had never seen a white person until she went to Birmingham at 11 years old. Didn't know racism, didn't know that culture, didn't understand it, And so you can imagine people there in Mount Bayou, you living in this world, and you don't understand what's outside of your world, because this is your world. And so,
Okay.
we went out, we ventured out, we go places. We understood that it was not just Mount Bayou, but we started that's when we started to understand that we are unique in this country, I guess.
Okay,
You know,
I gotta ask this now. So Mound Bayou in your day, and maybe still today, had everything you need. It had the drugstores, it had the doctors, like you said, the hospital, the furniture stores, whatever you needed, pretty much was there in Mound Bayou. You didn't have to go far.
pretty much, pretty much. I mean, if you needed to go to Sears, then you went to Cleveland. If you needed to go get certain things, uh, you would go outside of town. But for the most part, I grew up in the '60s. I think before me in the '40s, in the '30s. Then in those days, you probably didn't have to go outside of town. But as time went on, there were things that you know uh, caused you to have to go out of town.
I got you.
I think in the '40s and the '50s, you had the mechanization of the agriculture, and people had started going north. You had people going to Chicago and St. Louis and things like that. I wasn't aware of it because I wasn't looking at history. I'm just growing up.
Yeah,
But
right, right.
those things, when you look back on it, those things were happening. And so, yeah, times did change. Um, when I was in grade school, they brought in the Delta Health Center. It was the first rural health center in the country. And the people that came in to start it were white people, from most of them from the Boston area. And they came in, and then there was a family of white people that moved to Mound Bayou. I guess late 60s. And so there was a white family in town. I think it was the only one. And
Wow.
they're still friends today. You know, one of them was just here last year. And he considers Mound Bayou, even though he only stayed there a couple of years, you know, a place that he still loves. And he's white, you know. But my
Yeah.
point is that there are very few. I think there's 4 white people in Mound Bayou now.
Wow.
So you can just about count them all. But you know, been always been black.
Now, let's go back to some of the early days. You said it was swamp. What does that mean? That it was water? I mean, when I think of swamp, I don't think of nothing but alligators and no life around. What does swamp mean?
Yeah, I have to kind of imagine that what it meant at that time too. You know, if you, I have to kind of look at history to understand what Mound Bayou probably was in those days. You know, that the Delta is an area that the reason that it is the Delta is because the levees would the Mississippi River would overflow at certain points along the levee, and in that whole area, which is now 18 counties, I believe, in Mississippi, that whole 18 county area became like a large lake, a pond, and it smoothed out the land there, and that area became a place where the silt from the bottom of the river would overflow onto this area, and when it would flow back, and it dried up, you got some of the greatest land for crops in the country or in the world. And when they fixed that river where it wouldn't continue to overflow, now you got the Mississippi Delta. And so I imagine that in that area you had a lot of growth. You had a lot of undergrowth. You had a lot of brush and trees and things like that. And it was, some areas were lower than others. So I imagine Mound Bayou was a place where the water just didn't dry up all the way.
Okay.
And even now, just recently, in the last 2 or 3 months, the federal government has come in and to try to alleviate the flooding in this county area. And they focus on Mound Bayou because Mound Bayou is that lowest point in the county. And so I imagine that is why it was called a swamp, because, you know, you put all
Okay.
those things together. That's the reason why.
Now, when you say you didn't see black people, but if you looked at TV, you saw white people on television. Is that
Oh
the
yeah,
case?
yeah, oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we all watch Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, and we all watch Hee Haw on television.
Oh
We
yeah.
all yeah, so Lawrence Welk. I remember
Yeah,
all
yeah,
those.
yeah, right. I
Yeah,
kind of remember some of them names too myself,
yeah.
everybody.
So
But
yeah.
but 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 when you say it was all black people, the mayor was, and again, I got to just kind of imagine this only a little bit, everybody, because I'm in Detroit. We had a black mayor when I grew up.
Hmm.
No, I can't. I'm saying it wrong. For the majority of my life,
Hmm.
from growing up, there was a white man in front of him, but I was probably too young to know who that was. What have you? I think Roman Gribbs, whatever the name is. And then we had Coleman Young, and so it was all black town. Y'all had a black mayor, y'all had black school chiefs, police chiefs, and everything.
Well, imagine if you're in Africa, it wouldn't be remarkable to have a black everything in Africa. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
in those countries in Africa where Mount Bayou was totally founded by black people. They were previously enslaved people that came up from the plantation out of Vicksburg for the most part. See, I.T. Montgomery and his cousin Ben Green came up, and they the one that founded, went up and down the area till they settled on Mount Bayou. And for the most part, what they did was they brought the people that they knew that were industrious, forward looking, um, those types of people that they knew that could be successful in a brand new venture. And they brought those people up from the Vicksburg area, or they invited them up from the Vicksburg area. And then at some point, they got the core people in here, into Mound Bayou, they started inviting other industrious people from other areas of Mississippi and brought those types of people. So you had the cream of the crop of Black life in the state that were looking for places like Mound Bayou, and they came and they started businesses and they started, things there where people could succeed. Yeah. So
Okay, I
you
love it.
had Black people. They didn't, and even today, how many white people will come to a Black establishment?
Yeah, sure.
You didn't have a lot of white people who would even think to settle in Mound Bayou, and I think some did, but it's not something that's prevalent at all.
Yeah,
So if you're going to elect anybody to any position, you're going to elect the people that you know.
yeah, yeah, oh,
And so
sure.
they only elected Black people. And so for a good period of time, when I was growing up, the only Black elected officials in the state was in Mound Bayou because,
Wow.
everything else was white folks.
Now, when we go back to the theme of living in Black history, so you grew up like this. What did that do for you? And I've asked this before of other people who grew up in Africa and people in other states. As a Black person, did if a white person says something to you out of line, you felt like, hey man, I ain't got to take that. There's a question there,
Yeah. Yes, I
especially
guess.
in Mississippi. Because when I think of Mississippi, I'm thinking of, ooh, that's one of the worst states. I ain't going to Mississippi.
Yeah. A lot of
Yeah,
people think that about Mississippi.
right.
And even to this day, a lot of people think that, you know, and in a lot of ways they're correct. Mississippi had that tradition, had that moniker of
Yeah,
being that way. But the Delta was a little bit different because, you had so much agriculture in the Delta in the early 1900s that and you had this sharecropping and all those people there that were working in the Delta as a whole, the population of the Delta was mostly Black. So even today, even back then when they were ruled by white people, but as time progressed, when you got around to the 80s, late 70s and the 80s, then Black people started understanding the power that they wielded when they went and voted. And they
yeah, I
started
see.
voting for Black elected officials. And on through the 80s and the 90s, they continued to elect Black elected officials. So in the county of Bolivar County, you probably, and I haven't done any kind of scientific thing on this at all, but I
Yeah.
would imagine if you had 50 positions in the county, you may have 5 whites. You may, and I don't,
Oh, I
like I
see.
said, I don't really know, but
Yeah.
you got mostly, and I think that it's probably similar to that in the other counties. Bolivar
Yeah.
County is about 67% Black, and
Oh,
so
I love it. Okay.
people vote here, and so you ended up with a semi for the county, a semi apartheid, really, really a little touch of that apartheid system where only in the sense of in Bolivar County, because the businesses were all white in the county, going way back, then they've hung on to that. So if you got maybe 15 or 20% of population of white people in the county, or 30%, maybe that's probably more accurate, 30 to 40%, still they own the businesses,
Yeah, I
in
got
the
you.
county.
Yeah.
So, you still have that. But
Yeah.
as far as political offices, Black people are really have taken over that for the most part.
What is the what's the name of the high school? Is there one high school in Mound Bayou, one elementary school, and are those the schools you went to, that kind of thing?
Well, you're touching on a sore subject because in Mound Bayou, when I was growing up, the high school was, we had one high school in Mound Bayou. We were very, very proud of that high school. We had one elementary school, which is named after the founder, I.T. Montgomery. I just happened to grow, when I grew up, there was a Catholic school, which gave you a little accelerated education. So I went there for the first 6 years, and then I went to the high school. Now, the high school was JFK High School, and we were District 6 in Baldwin County. So as the years progressed, the county started losing population, and so the legislature decided that our county had too many districts for the legislature to fund. And so they wanted to consolidate some of the districts. And so our district got consolidated with the district that was north of us, which was Shelby. And so if you looked at it on the map, a good third of the county north of Baldwin County is in one school district now. There are two schools, but one school district. And so they had to close one school. And I think they really made a huge mistake by closing our school, because our school in Mound Bayou had a tradition of high excellency or high achievement that went all the way back to the founding of the town. And so even though we were underfunded, we were probably the only underfunded school district in the state. But the high achievement was way over what was going on in the rest of the state. And Mound Bayou High School, the high school in Mound Bayou, was listed as one of the top 100 high schools in the country by one of the major magazines in the country. And so, and there have been a lot of theses written on why are these kids achieving more in this school district than they are in other places. And so, so when they had two choices to consolidate the schools and keep one open and close the other, they kept the wrong one open. They kept the one who was really just plodding along like everybody else, instead of everybody coming to the one that was achieving more, which is what I think they should have done. But no, our school is closed. Okay. It gave us the option, because our school is closed in Mound Bayou. Then in 2018, they closed it. So when we needed a building to house a museum, the fine arts or music building was the one that was open. And so we went and asked for it, and we got that building, and that's where we put the museum.
Oh, I love it. Okay, I got you.
It benefited us, but I would rather it had gone another way. But it did.
Oh, I understand. Yeah. Before we get to questions from the audience, I got a couple more, if I may.
Sure.
What's the oldest buildings left there? Is there a plantation in Mount Bayou? Maybe, I mean, that might not be the question, but is there something that's old that's reflective of uh, the early 1900s or the 1800s, anything like that? That when you walk down the street, or if put another way, if a visitor comes to Mount Bayou, what would you show them that's reflective of that history?
That's an easy question to answer. One of the historical buildings that were really on the endangered list at one time for the country is the Founder's Home, I.T. Montgomery's Founder's Home. He was the founder, and his home, and then there's another home that is 3 doors down, that it actually used to be the same property. It was his daughter's home, and it's still standing. Those two homes are still standing. If you go down a little bit further down the street, north of there, there's one of the older buildings that you have a bank building, the old bank building that is still there. And I think that was early 1900s, that building. It's been restored a little, but they're really trying to get more funding to restore it to the point where they can put something in it that's palatable for everybody. And there's another 2 or 3 buildings that are historical in nature. The old Newton Hotel, And then you have the Cresswell home, which is our fourth mayor. That home is still there. If you go further up the street, it's not really historical, but the First Baptist Church, which was a brush arbor at one point, was the first church in town. But it's been built up and changed a lot. It's not historical anymore. But a lot of people, if you, and I found this out through other people coming to the museum. And when I pointed out the First Baptist Church, one guy asked me, he said, y'all got a First Baptist Church? So, yeah. Why is that an issue? He said, well, usually Black people never got First
Yeah,
Baptist.
that's right. Yeah,
Black people always got second and third. I said,
right.
well, we didn't have anybody in front of us. So
I
we got
got
First Baptist. So if you go across what the railroad used to be from First Baptist Church, there's an old cotton gin there. And then there's other places in town where there are old buildings. You know, the Taborian Hospital, which was built in 1942, it's been restored. It's still there. It's closed. And then the building that was the administration building for that hospital, that was also built around the same time, it is in disrepair. It really needs a work, but it's still standing. And if there was money to restore it, I imagine that the owners would restore it to something, you know, because it is a historical building.
you. Okay.
There may be one or two others that I'm not remembering, but
Okay.
for the most part, the area that I'm talking about is probably one of the most historical streets in the country for Black African Americans, African
And what's the
American.
name of that street?
It's just West Main. It's West Main and Mound Bayou, but if you go
Okay.
down West Main, you know, when we do city tours, we always do West Main. I mean, you have to.
Okay.
It's a very historical street, you know. So, and you
How
can
about this?
actually get out and walk it.
Is there a park that is reflective of where the Black people used to gather back in the day that is still a park now? Anything like that?
There's a park, but if you add to it and say where people used to gather back in the day, I wouldn't add that to the park that's there now. When I grew up, the area next to the founder's home was like a grove of trees, and we used to have picnics there. But it's changed now. It's
Okay.
gone through a metamorphosis, and it's changed. There's an area across the street that we own now that people have. The city has, or people, when they have large outdoor parties, or the circus comes to town or something like that, that is still there. We, like I said, we have that now, but that's present day. That's not something
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
Uh,
Something back in the day. And then
yeah.
just one more on that note. Are the street signs is there a street where the street signs are the original street signs,
Oh no.
lights,
Oh no.
poles,
When
or
I
nothing like that, I guess.
when I grew up, we didn't know addresses. We didn't have addresses.
Oh,
When
really?
I was very young, um, I didn't know anybody's address because people didn't go by addresses. If you wanted to go to somebody's house, you say go down to make it. You know, you did the stuff that people did in the country. You go down to the milk jug and get to the third house on the left hand side. You know, where the cat's sitting out there. You know, they we didn't have that. And then we got into the 70s and the 80s, and we started doing addresses and things like that. So
Oh,
yeah,
really? Okay.
we came into the upgraded into the future.
I got you. Let me open it up. Is there anyone who's watching? I saw a few people join us that might have a question over and above what I've asked. Otherwise, anybody? Okay, I guess they like my questions. How about this one? There's always some rivalry. Is there a rivalry between one side of the town and the other?
Yes, it became that when we grow up, there was an area that's on the east side of town that was called Banks Addition. Now, if we had a football game, it was as kids, we would have these citywide football games. And if we divided up the town where we had teams, then yeah, we would divide it up from the east to the west. Everybody that lived across the tracks on the west side, uh, then we would play against the guys that lived on in Banks Edition. But it wasn't serious. It was just something that enabled us to have a team. It wasn't a serious thing. Everybody grew up and went to the same place. Our mothers and fathers knew one another. So it wasn't those type of rivalries.
Okay. Is there has there been any strife in the town
Oh yeah.
of any sort?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We've had our knockdown dragouts. It's more like what you would probably get in families. It's maybe in an outgrowth.
Okay.
Um, family dynamics. Maybe at a barbecue, people are that guy don't like he don't like Uncle so and so and she don't like sister or auntie, whoever that was. You have that, and it grows into families. Mound Bayou was more families than anything, as I was growing up. There's different dynamics to it now. Um, but you had almost, and I don't want to put too much on this, but if you have the Hatfields and the McCoys, you know,
Okay.
it's really not to that level, but as a sense of that, if you
I got you.
if you ask that question, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
um, it's some of that going on, and some of that, growing up. Um, and it kind of black people back in the day worked together, in the civil rights era. um, you had a lot of them working together, but you still had your snitches. You still had the people
Oh,
who,
really?
who felt,
Yeah.
yeah, you still have people who felt that the white man's water is tastier, and
Really? Okay.
they be, so I think you've had that throughout life here in this country,
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
and an outgrowth of that is Mount Bayou. It wasn't all peaches and cream, you know.
Yeah.
So I guess some of that dynamic was there too.
How about this one? Is there a side of Mount Bayou among the black people that is a more upscale than another side of town? I mean, is there like some streets where they built bigger homes than other streets, and the more well-to-do black folks live? Is there that dynamic in Mount Bayou?
I wouldn't categorize it that way, um, because I think it was interspersed throughout the town. You may have two or three, four, five people in a row build nice houses, but that's not what you call one side of town, because that same thing could happen on another side of town.
I
I
got you.
really wouldn't say that. Do you have people who did better than other people?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
have that, but
yeah.
and Mount Bayou is not that big, so we're not big enough to have parts of town that's way bigger than the other parts of town.
Oh, I got you. Uh, when is there a festival or something like that that is a long-standing festival in Mount Bayou?
Septemberfest. Now, Septemberfest is 16 or 17 years old. And every year except COVID, we've had Septemberfest, and it's a homecoming. So there are a lot of people who left Mount Bayou because of jobs, because of various reasons, and they've gone to Atlanta, or they've gone to, Detroit, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Nashville, and other places. And so they come home. They come home on Septemberfest, and it is a reason for the classes that went to John F. Kennedy High School to have the 20th anniversary or the 30th class reunion, those types of things. So if you can imagine the 82 class or the 91 class having a reunion, they designed those reunions to end up around that time of Septemberfest. So you end
Okay.
up with a lot of people in town for different reasons. And I think, I wasn't here for a good part of the time that started off, that Septemberfest. But it seems to me now that I'm here, now that I'm back, that some of the other cities that are in the county started mimicking what was going on in Mound Bayou. So our Septemberfest is usually Labor Day weekend. It's always Labor Day weekend. And
Oh,
so
okay.
Memorial Day weekend, there's a town 4 miles from us. They have their homecoming. And then there's another weekend that the town 2 miles from us have their homecoming.
I
So
got you.
everybody starting to have their own homecomings in the area, which is another reason for us to build the tourist attractions that we aim to build in the town. Bringing in hotels and restaurants and things like that, because there are a lot of people that come into the county area, and they all have to go to Cleveland because Cleveland is the only place that has hotels in the county now. And so it makes sense for us to do what we're doing in Mound Bayou, to bring those type of resources to the town. We're having tourists to come to the museum now, and they're looking for places to stay, and they always go into Cleveland or Clarksdale. And so we can do a lot more, and we can also capture a lot of the businesses that is coming to town because of the tourism now. We can capture that in Mound Bayou if we be wise and invest like other people would do. Invest in the town and build,
I got you.
the restaurants and things like that we need. Because I think we would even create more. The more we do, the more they will come. So,
Yeah. Oh, sure, sure.
So anyway, that's where our head is at right now.
Yeah. A couple more before we almost come to a close. Why don't they celebrate the founding of Mountain Bayou? What is there a date known for that? Or that's not what
July
that's
12th, July 12th every year is the founding of Mount Bayou, the Founders Day. And that is a solemn celebration that happens every year. I forgot to mention that. But yeah,
okay.
we do have that. And there are programs surrounding that. Sometimes things happen before, depending on what day of the week the 12th falls on. Sometimes there's a celebration before or after the 12th. We open our museum on Founders Day. We opened July 12th, 2021, because it was just the appropriate day to do it. So
Okay.
yeah, that is a very, very notable occasion in Mount Bayou, you know.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I'm gonna go back since I got a little more time. I'm gonna go back just in this regard. You said you think, not you think. You said your ancestors were one of the first to move to Mount Bayou.
Yeah,
They
my
were
ancestors were they were some of the original settlers. They came up from that plantation. My great grandparents were enslaved down there at the plantation down in Vicksburg area. And so they were either related or friends of I.T. Montgomery. Like I said, he only brought people who were industrious, um, or invited them to come to Mount Bayou. And so I have four, Ada and Augusta Simmons, and then Sally and Samuel Thompson on either side of my grandmother's family. I mean, my mother's family. And so they were the ones that came to Mount Bayou and helped with the beginning of Mount Bayou. Yes.
wow. Do you know where where they lived and any of that type of thing?
Well, when they came, they were in agriculture. And so they first started outside of town. A lot of people that were part of town didn't live in the city limits. And so my great grandparents lived west of town, and the Simmons on my grandmother's side, now they did have a plantation, but it wasn't a brutal you know, negative plantation. It was just a place where they had land and they had people working there on the land. And you know, they profited off of it. My grandfather, I mean, on the other side, the Thompsons, uh, I don't know if they had a plantation, but they had a lot of land outside of town. And they farmed that land. He ended up buying the cotton gin, one of the cotton gins in town. And so he became, pretty well off in that business, because cotton was a good business at that, at sometimes, So yeah, they didn't have. So then eventually they moved into town. I know my grandmother moved into town and they built a house in town. So not too far from where I grew up. So yes,
Okay.
hope I answered your question.
And maybe one more. What do you what's Mound Bayou look? I mean, you kind of given us a little hint on it, what it needs. What's the hope for Mound Bayou? What do you want America to know? I mean, you've given us at the beginning. uh, You want us to come down there, coming down there to
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, let me
and,
tell you,
and visit your music. Go ahead to promote it to close us out. Let's call it
well,
that.
let me say it this way, because I love that question. I think that since, you can look at it as if everybody left because they had to go to Chicago, or they had to go get a job, and you got all this outgrowth of people leaving the area. But actually, what they left us is they left us a heritage, because our people came before us, fought really, really hard to do the things that they did, and they left a history that we have, that we can be proud of. And so I think that for us here now, that we should take advantage of this gift that they gave us. And so for Mound Bayou being a town on its own, you know, um, we should take these historical places, and we should tell the story of the people that came before us, what they did. This is the place that housed Mamie Till when she came down to Mississippi, um, to attend the trial of the killers of her son. Well, think of it. Think if Mound Bayou did not exist at the time, what the story could have been. With Mamie Till not having a place to be safe. With the and with the from the struggles that were going on here in Mississippi. Think of if Mound Bayou wasn't here, and 13,000 people and more could come here and organize in the civil rights movement, or even in the Emmett Till trial, if T.R.M. Howard was not able to go and investigate that trial and investigate that situation. Think about if they weren't here to build the hospital that they built that became the first HMO in the country. All the innovation they did. In Mound Bayou, they built the first manufacturing venture for Black people in the country. In 1912, it opened, and 16,000 people from around the country came to Mound Bayou to see Booker T. Washington open that manufacturing venture. And so there's a heritage here. There's a story that most people don't know. There's a pride of the way African Americans stood out, and innovated, and did the things that they did here in Mound Bayou, and educated themselves here in this situation, and excelled. And so that's a story that we all need to know. Black people around the country need to know, because when you hear the history of slavery, you hear the history of what went on in those Jim Crow years, a lot of it seems to be negative, and we don't take it as the positive aspect of it that we should, to look at these people are heroes. The people in Mound Bayou mentored Fannie Lou Hamer. They mentored Medgar Evers. They mentored some of these other civil rights leaders in this country, Aaron Henry, and some of these other people. So without Mound Bayou, a lot of these things don't exist in this country the way it does, the way it is. So we have an important story to tell. And then we have the land here that surrounds Mound Bayou that we can build whatever we want to build. If we want to build an amphitheater, if we want to build art museums, if we want to build sports arenas, if we want to build more homes for people to stay in, if we want to build manufacturing, if we want to trade with Africa or the Caribbean, we could build all of that here. So we have access to do whatever we want, and when people are talking about, they run up on situations where they are in cities where they're being oppressed by police forces and other things like that, and they're looking to go to Africa or looking to build their own towns. Why not Mound Bayou? That's another place, that's another option. And we have a fantastic history that we can all work on and do a lot of things that we all endeavor to do right here in Mississippi.
I love it. And with that said, I'm coming down there, and you and I talked offline,
Yes,
and
sir.
we're gonna say it online a little bit. We're gonna put a date on it, and I'm gonna ask everybody to meet me there. I don't know if that July 12th is the right date. We'll talk about that. We'll put something together and make it happen. And then have some activities. We'll do the dance in the barn or whatever we got to do, and the
Yes, sir.
fish fry. Is it fish fry? A lot of seafood down there.
Or whatever you want. You
Yeah,
want
but
a
I'm
fish
saying
fry, then it's a fish fry. If you want a
yeah,
barbecue, then it's a barbecue. Whatever you want.
yeah. But I mean, do y'all eat a lot of fish? Is it because you near the water or something?
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. We just
Catfish.
go out
What
with our
kind of fish?
we go out with our little fishing pole and we grab what we want to grab. You want some buffalo, some perch, what you know what you want. We get it. We get it for you. Some
Is that
catfish.
right? I love it. Well, I'm on my way. How about the sweet tea? About the sweet tea?
Oh man, we put all the sugar you want in it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yes, we do all these things, and I'll apologize for my screensaver here.
That's
I
all
need to
right,
fix that.
man.
But
That's all right.
yeah, I mean, we'll fix it up for you.
We're gonna make it happen, everybody. Give us the name of the museum and the website once again, please.
The name of the museum is Mound Bayou Museum. The website is simply moundbayoumuseum.org. You can also find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, all under Mound Bayou Museum. And we have a fantastic lady who does our social media. She's out of Atlanta, but she does a fantastic job. So we have a lot of content out there,
Okay.
on social media that she's put out. So yes, come in and take a look. And a
Yeah.
lot of that history is there. There's been a lot of documentaries done on Mound Bayou, and there's a lot of articles written on it, and then more and more coming out now every day. So take a look.
Okay. Last question. You proud of yourself? This is your calling or what?
It's my what now?
Your calling?
My calling?
Yeah.
It must be, because I enjoy every second of it. I looked around and found out nobody's doing this. Nobody is taking it to the next level. And when I kept looking around, I said, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? I'm looking over here, looking to the left, looking to the right. Who's going to do it? And I said, okay, I'll raise my hand. My brother who stayed here, he had a little time as 4 years that he was the mayor. And he was the whole time kind of holding it down, into the history and did a lot to be involved in the history of Mound Bayou. And so it was easy just when I came from California, just to slide on up in here and be a part of this whole thing. And I'm here.
There you go. Man, we so proud of you, brother. We appreciate you being there and keeping that history alive because you're living Black history every day.
Yes, sir, because we Black and it's history. So
yeah, you living it every day. And again, I thank you so very much for coming on and being with us, Brother Herman Johnson. You the man. Appreciate you, brother.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.